history. Now, you can look this up, and I'm telling you, this will help you get a better feel and a better fit of understanding of, okay, what happened to these people to be held captive and then sent over into these slave ships and sent over into this quote unquote new land. Because majority, a lot of us also, because we're only 13% of we were so-called 13% of the American population. And in that, about 7% or 8% of us were already here. I would even say about 10% of us were already here. About 3% of us actually came over on the ships. That would be about 10% of us that was actually in totality of the whole slave trade. And when you take that into account, there was only a small percentage of us who actually came from the slave ships over into the Americas. But there's something interesting about these few people that actually came. So these few people actually were already tribes in their own right in the many lands that were settled in the African continent. Rather, we came from the east up through the north in Morocco or down into the western Ivory Coast where majority of us settled. The reason why we came into Africa was specifically because we were exiled out of Spain, Portugal. This is where a lot of us Black Americans also share the same line or blood because we were mixed with the Aboriginal Black people that were already here, okay? So in saying that, when we were exiled out of Spain, we ended up in the African continent. And we were able to pretty much live pretty much well and behind the scenes without even being identified amongst the people. The problem arose exactly when there were certain edicts and things that were handed down by the church, which allowed a lot of us to start being rounded up because technically we were in Spain, we were in Portugal, we lived there. That's the very strong culture, history of a people that were there, that were exiled and only had a choice. We either had to convert or we had to leave. And again, it is told many times over that a lot of that decisions and things like that we had to make definitely serve notice, and it caused a lot of turmoil and a lot of grief at the time. And so we settled in Africa for generations. Now, understand, this was a span of about maybe 500-600, we would say close to 700-year process of occurring. And within that span, we spent quite a bit of time, a few generations in Africa. So we built societies and we built families and we thrived and all of that. However, we were in a land that we couldn't call our own. It's a huge nation, a huge land. And so we settled there. And in settling there, guess what happened? Guess what occurred? The tribes that were already there were questioning who these people are. Our customs were different. Language was different. We was another tribe amongst many. And that's something that set us apart. But there were a few things that we done differently. We practiced different. We practiced our faiths differently. We worshiped differently. We had our statures differently. The clothes we wore was different. It carried royalty, and even in our children. Everything arose once we procreated with the women and the men around the areas, the other tribes, and we commingled and we raised families, and this went on for generations until it was noted that something was missing. And what was missing was the financial aspect of having a people leave one country under the taxation law and go to another country without still abiding exactly where they actually originated from and who were there under the order of, and so on and so forth. So when we could not produce, we were rounded up as prisoners. Yes, prisoners. A lot of of our families and a lot of the people who were exiled out of Spain, Portugal area at the time, and we were held captive after living a significant amount of time in Africa and bearing children and generations came forth. We were rounded up as prisoners, and we had to pay a debt. We owed a debt to Spain because we, though forced to leave under our will and stripped of our faith, we were rounded up. Some of the older elders, our elders and mothers and fathers, they tried their best to fight back, killed off millions of them. I can only just fathom the amount of atrocious things that occurred. And unfortunately, our diasporan brothers and sisters had a hand in the rounding of the current Black American descendants of slavery. They had a hand in that, and they had a hand in the market of that, and they were rewarded weaponry as an exchange to round up as many children as they could. And so if you actually go and research some of the slave documents of some of the ones that came over, you will clearly see the ages of these practically children that came over on these boats. We were deceived to believe that they were a lot of adults that came over, but from the documents, I didn't see anyone no older than maybe 33, 34. And in saying that, it provided a real sense of knowing now that makes sense. It's better to carry, and it's also better to control when you can indoctrinate those to do you service and become your servant. And so that was the mechanism of trial. And so Spain said, hey, you do as you wish, and we would be ones to be able to carry forward this trade system that was considered to be human cargo, which was our ancestors. And so when we think about, well, y'all don't have an identity. No, we do. We know exactly where our line and our lineage derive from. We have been exiled of many nations, yet we've been used in those nations as well in order to create prosperity and growth and opportunity. You're living in one now. And in doing so, we have now reached our final destination. We've reached our final destination. So in saying that, I wanted to break down understanding the source of people's culture and how we identify with that, and how we have to be able to understand and appreciate the energy that comes from each other's culture. There's nothing to take away from our diasporan brothers and sisters. You guys are beautiful people. I work with beautiful people in my profession. And in doing so, it allows me to shed light on our greatness here in the Americas. And it allows those who may not know our story to understand and how we face our adversities, because our story is not complete. We just revving it up a little bit more because it's necessary to be recognized, to be identified, and to not be made a fool of. We are not fools. We are very aware of what's going on. We just tired of being poked. And at this point, we just want to be left alone and be put in a position of greatness, because that is what we deserve, and that is why we are the most resilient people around this world. And so we have to bear witness to our disconnect in communication and understand the, again, cultural and ethnic and the tribalism and all of the other melting pot of areas to where we may not see each other eye to eye. It's very important for us to realize that we are not the same. We may be identified as the same, but we are not the same. Our phenotype is different. Our cultural acceptance and our perspective, even how our I'll give you a great example. If you think about our beats, you have upbeat, you have downbeat, and you have different sounds and chemistry that we may flow to versus some of our diaspora brothers and sisters who may find a different beat that they flow to. And that is respective. And in understanding that dynamic, then you can break down the true essence of who we are. We do not vibrate the same, and that's okay. But to have this approach as if we are to accept anyone to just walk in to our culture as if we're supposed to embrace us, we're not where our ancestors were. You have to answer for the position that you carry in our house, because we're very respectful when we come to your house. And many times when we come to your house, which is our Mother Earth, Africa, when we come to your house, there's a bit disdain there. There's a bit of, not sure, you want to feel connected, but it's in a sorrowful way, and you want to feel like you have a sense of belonging, but it's only reflective of the skin that we carry. But the energy exchange is not there. You have to understand the dynamic of knowing and doing. And one thing that I had to realize is that you have a living mind and you have a survivor mind. And one of the big things that a lot of our diaspora brothers and sisters speak on is we're very hard workers. We get out here and we take care of our business. We do what we need to do in order to survive. We are already 300 years ahead of you. And in being 300 years ahead of you, we've already learned through our resilience the necessities to live and not learn to just only survive. And so our perspective on assisting and just at least calling, say, hey, file, like you are not even allowing yourself to recognize the position that we put ourselves in. We're still fighting, but we okay with y'all coming over and building on our resources. But don't forget whose land and the blood and the sweat and the tears that came from this. And also we have the argument, oh, well, where are you from originally? Like everyone is from genetically Africa. That has no basis anywhere. What we're speaking on is primarily where we've been for the last 400 or something years. At the end of the day, we are so disconnected from our diaspora. It's unfortunate. But again, what did I say early on? It's only about maybe 3 or 4% of us that are truly from or came over from that bloodline. But the majority of us were already here. And so we need to definitely get that understood in relation to the misinterpretation of our position as Black Americans. We speaking as a whole, a collective. We bear witness to ourselves for 400 years here on this soil. The reason why I'm repeating it, because I have to allow that to be able to be the process that has to be thought through to understand a people, to understand an identity. You cannot laugh at that, because we have a story, and our story did not start in Africa. Our story only was just a transition into and then out of Africa. But we have an even bigger story when we were in Spain. Some of us found our way into the Moor history. We were Moors. A lot of the base camps that were set up here in the Americas was also of Moorish descent. This is documented. And so you have to understand, there's a lot at play here in relation to the Black American experience. We're not fools, and we damn sure ain't slaves. We carry forth the essence of the truth. We carry forward the essence of resilience. We carry forward the essence of righteousness. And we've had an influence on the world, and we're still here.